Well, did Pfizer and BioNTech falsify key data in their COVID tests for their vaccines, essentially trying to lie to all of us about what was actually happening with these results? That's the finding of investigative journalist Sonia Elijah, who's written extensively on Pfizer and BioNTech and their cover up in all of this. Journalist Sonia Elijah joins me now. Nice to see you. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Clayton, for having me on.
Well, it's my pleasure. So thank you for reporting on this and bringing this to light. What did you find when you were going through these new documents and results and tests that were starting to come to light? What did you find?
Yes, so I actually wanted just to put this into context. Now, I wrote a two-part investigative report for Trial Site News last year. This was on the leaked European Medicine Agency emails and Pfizer-related documents. And it related to the time period of sort of mid-November 2020, running up to the time when emergency use authorization was granted to the Pfizer and BioNTech vaccine. What was really alarming with these emails and the documents is that the regulators were highly concerned about the quality of the vaccine. And as particularly what they had noticed was there was a significant drop in the RNA integrity level of the commercial batches of the vaccine. These were the batches done sort of large scale, large volume. It dropped down to 55%, the RNA integrity level, compared to 78% in the clinical batches, which were the batches used in the clinical trials. So what the RNA level integrity sort of what it points to, it's how intact the mRNA molecule is in the vaccine. And we know, looking at the documents, a relatively intact molecule was needed for the efficacy, for safety. So what they found were these truncated, fragmented mRNA species in the vaccine. And what was shocking is that they literally dropped, the way they sort of solved the problem was to drop the criteria, the standard, down to 50%, to allow at least half the mRNA molecules to be truncated. And they had no idea, this is the regulators and the vaccine manufacturers, how the safety and efficacy implications of the fragmented RNA.
So, not to interrupt you, but they, being the regulators and Pfizer working in tandem, lowered the standard
down to 50%, so allowing half to be truncated. Now, where my recent report comes in, now, conditional marketing authorization was granted by the European Medicine Agency. They granted Pfizer and BioNTech this, the CMA was given on the basis that BioNTech, which is the marketing authorization holder, meet specific obligations because there was a concern with the quality of the vaccine. And one of those specific obligations, they've sort of categorized it as SO1, and I'll just read it. There's a lack of experimental data on the truncated RNA and expressed proteins does not permit a definite conclusion and needs to be further characterized. Therefore, additional characterization data remain to be provided as a specific obligation. Now, following that, BioNTech had, in order to meet that obligation, they did a test called a Western blot. Now, a Western blot is a technique used to identify and separate specific proteins from a protein mixture extracted from cells, and it's based on their molecular weights.
And we have here from your piece, I want to put this on the screen that we'll be able to show our audience, a normal blot test. So can you describe, this is a normal blot test. What are we seeing in this normal blot test slide here?
A normal blot test, you'll have the bands, you'll see these sort of black bands, and they sort of have an arc to it, almost like a slight smile. And there's smears you can see. They're done by hand, they're done manually. Now, what the Western blot that was provided by BioNTech to the regulator were completely regular, perfectly regular bands, all sort of uniform. And when you zoomed in on one of these bands, you could see perfect row of pixels. Now, a scientific expert provided me with further evidence. So what they did, they used a image analysis software to quantify the bands. And when they did that, they did a plot profile of the bands. And this is what is so alarming and so concerning is you can actually see certain bands copied and pasted. So they've been literally duplicated
And
in
that's what
groups of two or three. And that's what my report shows. And this is the new evidence. This is, I believe, the smoking gun because it's a copy and pasted data. And what is just astounding at Clayton is that the regulators accepted these as authentic Western blots. Now, my report goes into what a conventional one looks like. Now, the counter argument is that all these are maybe automated. These are done by computer. Now, if you take that argument and run with it, it fails to explain the duplication of the results because an automated Western blot will you'll still see variations in the positioning of the bands and their intensity. And it also fails to explain the terminology used by BioNTech and Pfizer. They use the same terminology that you would describe a conventional Western blot, one done by hand.